This video was intended to inform and educate the public.
Hello everybody, welcome once again to another video here on the Junkyard News. And in today's video we have a little update. I don't know if any of you are aware of an Alabama police officer, Mac Marquette, who fatally and repeatedly shot 39-year-old Stephen Perkins, who was outside his home to confront trespassers, legally armed, on his own property, all in an attempt to help out a repo man who was trying to repossess Perkins' truck. Now, this repo man had attempted earlier in the evening to repossess Perkins' truck. Perkins came out, and it's accused that Perkins brandished a firearm, kind of like an attempt to say, hey man, do you really want to do this? I'm on my property and I'm armed for self-defense. Do you really want to do this? Which prompted the repo man to leave. Now the repossessor called the police and said, hey look man, I got to repossess this truck. Homeowner came outside, pulled a gun, maybe even pointed it at me. I'm a little scared. I want to attempt this again. Is there any chance you can have a couple officers come with me? And that's pretty much what happened. Few cops came by, actually set up in an ambush position, hiding around the corner of Perkins' home, waiting for the repo man to once again attempt the repossession. Repo man comes back, tries to repossess the truck. Perkins once again comes outside.
This video, caught on a neighbor's doorbell camera, captures the moment the Perkins family says police fatally shot 39-year-old Steve Perkins. Police, get on the ground! The warning appearing to come immediately before police open fire, killing the husband and father. The deadly confrontation around 2 a.m. September 29th stemmed from a tow truck driver trying to repossess Perkins' truck. Police say the driver arrived earlier, but left when Perkins flashed a gun, then came back hours later, accompanied by Decatur police.
They started firing before they even got the full first command out of their mouth.
The department states Perkins brandished the weapon towards an officer, causing the officer to fire. His family's attorney says Perkins had no idea it was police in his front yard.
It doesn't matter whether he had a weapon or not. He never was given an opportunity to comply, and if he had a weapon, he was well within his rights to carry a firearm.
All he knows is, and all he sees, is trespassers on his property. Perkins pulls out his firearm, and as soon as he pulls out his firearm, Officer Marquette comes around the corner. Again, he was staged around the corner in an ambush position, yells at Perkins to get on the ground as he unloads his magazine on him. Now, Alabama law is pretty clear. When it comes to repossessing property, if in the first attempt there is some type of breach of peace and the repossessing doesn't go smoothly and there's some type of altercation, if police are called and police want to get involved in a repossession in Alabama, the law is clear. They have to go before a judge and get a court order allowing them to assist in the repossession. But that's too much trouble. That's going to take too long. We want to get this done and over with tonight. And what's the easiest and fastest way to do this? Police, get on the ground! We're going to murder the man on his own property. And that's exactly what transpired. Perkins comes out with his firearm on his own property to confront trespassers, and Marquette shot him down for it. Now, when Marquette realized that he acted outside the law by not getting a court order to assist in this repossession, his defensive team and him came up with another solution. Why don't we use stand your ground?
He was on my ground. You all saw that, right? Everything inside the red line is mine. Inside the red line that's my ground.
And that's exactly what they tried to do. Officer Marquette went before a judge in Alabama and said, I'm entitled to immunity because I was standing my ground. But unfortunately for Officer Marquette, the judge wasn't having any of it. So the murder trial of this white Alabama officer will proceed after a judge in the case denied his defense bid for immunity using the state's stand your ground law. Judge Charles Elliot concluded there was insufficient evidence that former Decatur, Alabama officer Mac Marquette acted in self-defense when he repeatedly shot 39-year-old Stephen Perkins, who was outside his home to confront trespassers, by his view. The judge said he based his decision on two simple questions. One, did Marquette act within the scope of his job as a police officer, and were his actions consistent with what a reasonable officer would do in that same situation? But we already know what a reasonable officer would do in that situation, because there were other police officers on scene, and not a single one of the other officers pulled the trigger. That's right. Marquette was the only one to pull the trigger, and not only pull the trigger, empty his whole magazine on the man. So the judge says the answer to the first question is pretty straightforward, because Marquette and 3 other officers were dispatched to help Caleb Combs after he called police accusing Perkins of pointing a gun at his chest when Combs tried to repossess his truck. Combs told police he wanted to retry the seizure, but said he would not go back to the home alone. Again, Alabama law, however, requires a judge's authorization if there is a breach of the peace during an attempted repossession. And that didn't happen in this case. So Marquette actually went against the law when he trespassed and got involved, making him the aggressor. And you can't use stand your ground if you're the aggressor. Now, Judge Elliot wrote that the officers did have the authority to approach Perkins' property, maybe even to park nearby and just observe, but they did not have cause, once they viewed there was no crime occurring, to enter his property. Had they behaved as investigators and made contact with Perkins, their claim of self-defense would have been easier to advance and would actually hold water. Since they failed to do that, the judge viewed Marquette and the other officers as trespassers on another person's property, acting outside their authority. And again, it didn't look good to the judge that the officers actually got there ahead of the repossessor and stationed themselves, hiding outside Perkins' home, around walls, around corners, waiting for Combs to return on the night of the shooting. Marquette and another officer, Joey Williams, stood at the side of the house out of sight, waiting for Perkins. So at that moment, they're trespassing on his property. Repo Man's not even there yet, but they are on his property, lurking about, trespassing. Body cam footage shows Marquette rounding a corner to confront Perkins. In a matter of seconds, Perkins appears to point a gun at Marquette, unaware that he's even a police officer. He just knows there's somebody on his property. Now, Officer Marquette does shout, "Police, get on the ground," but before he's even finished with the sentence, he fires 17 rounds, killing the father of 2. The footage reveals that Marquette was partially obstructed by Perkins' truck. Perkins turned to face Marquette and briefly tried to move his gun away from the officer, but he was too late. So once he heard police, he tried to de-escalate the situation, and it looks like he did not want to point his firearm at a cop, because we know how that could end, and that's the way it did end. But alas, it was too late, because before Marquette even finished his sentence, he had already started shooting. Now, Officer Marquette told investigators that he drew his firearm because he considered Perkins a threat to the tow driver. The former officer claimed that after he shouted at Perkins, the pair locked eyes and he feared he would be shot. The officers claimed they ordered Perkins to drop his weapon, but he refused. How can he refuse if you start shooting before you even finish your sentence? Now, the officers accompanying Marquette testified that they were there to keep the peace and to investigate Perkins for pulling a gun on Combs, which, if Combs wanted to press charges, could be a misdemeanor charge of menacing. The state agent who investigated the case testified that it was standard practice for officers to accompany people to help maintain order, but he also said that the best way to keep the peace is for officers to announce their presence. He said the way the officers concealed the presence and ambushed Perkins was unusual for a misdemeanor investigation, saying such techniques are typically reserved for an active crime scene. Now, jurors will be left to decide whether Marquette was at Perkins' house to keep the peace or whether he acted reasonably when applying deadly force to a man who was just trying to defend his home and his property from trespassers. The officer's trial is scheduled to begin June 9th, but that could be delayed if the defense appeals the judge's immunity ruling. And there you have it. There's the meat and potatoes. What do you think? Thank you again for watching this video here on the Junkyard News. Be careful, people. I'm telling you, you never know in this day and age when the next interaction you have with a police officer brings you to being highlighted in our next video. Thanks again, and stay safe out there.
Videos uploaded by the Junkyard News are helped in part by viewers just like you. You can show your support for this channel by clicking the thumbs up, sharing our videos, or hitting that all-important support button on our channel page. Don't want to miss a video or a story? Make sure to check us out and like us on Facebook at The Junkyard News.